2020 Volkswagen today, and you won't pay any interest for the next 6 years. Click, call, or come by your Volkswagen dealer today and get 0% APR financing for 72 months on select 2019 and 2020 models. Most of the time, my top priority when working on Yandere Simulator is adding new ways to eliminate your rivals. However, I don't want to neglect other aspects of the game, so I spent the past 10 days adding a bunch of changes and improvements that I've wanted to implement for a very long time. For example, when two students have a relationship with one another, such as being family members or lovers, they will have a unique reaction to seeing their loved one being murdered. Let's take these two, for example, the Basu sisters. They are very close to one another and are rarely seen apart. Normally, the Basu sisters would run away in fear after witnessing murder, but if one of them watches you kill her sister right in front of her eyes, she will attack you the same way that a heroic student would. Under normal circumstances, the Basu sisters are physically weak, but after seeing a family member die, their strength is boosted to the maximum level. In other words, if someone sees you murder their loved one, they will attack you with far more force than they normally would be capable of. This can result in a nearly instantaneous game over if you're not careful. So, you should pay special attention to the relationships between various characters, and be very careful not to let someone see you kill their loved one. The Basu sisters' routine revolves around spending time with one another, so if you kill one of them, this will change the routine of the surviving sister. From that day forward, she will spend some of her time mourning her sister's death. Okaruto likes to spy on the Basu sisters in the morning, but if the Basu sisters are both dead, Oka changes her schedule and spends the morning in her club room instead. I think it's important for NPCs to change their routines depending on who is dead and who is alive. If you've been following Yandere Simulator's development for a long time, you're probably aware that it's possible to kidnap a girl, torture her, break her mind, and bring her to school as a mind-broken slave who will do your bidding. Specifically, she will kill your current rival for you. I've made a few changes to mind-broken slaves in this version of the game. First of all, they will no longer spawn in front of the school. They will now spawn hiding behind some bushes. The old murder-suicide animation was disappointing. I've implemented a new one that represents my vision of murder-suicide much more accurately. Do it. Kill. 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 Much better. On a completely different note, a new corpse disposal method has been added to the game. It's now possible to dig a hole in the gardening club, dump a corpse inside of that hole, and bury it. However, I feel like this method is far too easy. I think it needs an extra step. Logically, the cops would be able to find a corpse fairly easily with the help of a well-trained police dog. The dog would sniff out the corpse, cops would dig wherever the dog was sniffing, and then the dead body you buried would be discovered. However, I have a solution for that. If you find a kitten, and then kill the kitten, you can bury its dead body above the corpse you buried in the garden. When the dog sniffs out a human corpse, and the cops start digging, they will find the dead cat, and presume that the dog only smelled a dead animal. They won't bother digging any deeper, and the corpse will remain undiscovered. In other words, to successfully get away with burying a corpse in the garden, you'll have to kill a small creature. What? You didn't forget Yandere-chan's true nature, did you? In addition to everything I named above, recently, I had the opportunity to watch people play Yandere Simulator for the first time. This was an incredibly valuable experience for me because it showed me what aspects of the game are confusing for newcomers. After I realized how difficult it can be to play Yandere Sim for the first time, I felt inspired to put a tutorial into the game. My original plan for the game's tutorial was a scripted sequence where Kokona asks Yandere-chan to help her rehearse a play about a serial killer. The rehearsal would introduce all of the game's core mechanics: stabbing, dragging corpses, disposing of evidence, etc. However, it would be time-consuming to add this type of sequence to the game, and I don't want the game's development to be delayed any further. So I decided to include a different type of tutorial that could be added to the game much faster. Here's what I came up with. When the player triggers certain criteria, such as damaging their reputation, a tutorial window will appear to provide information about the current situation. If you don't want to see these tutorial windows, you can disable them with a single button press. This is a temporary solution. I still want to implement the serial killer rehearsal one day, but I'll save that for some time in the future, probably after the game's crowdfunding campaign. In order to determine what type of information would be beneficial for a new player, I had to imagine that I was playing Yandere Simulator for the first time. When I did this, the game began to look completely different to me. I started noticing all kinds of game design flaws and huge glaring problems that I had been ignoring up until this point. I decided to spend the month of April fixing everything that was bothering me about the game. I made a tremendous number of changes to the game over the course of the past month, and I'm going to name the most significant changes in this video. When I first introduced the student council, I stated that they would send you to the guidance counselor if they caught you misbehaving. I completely forgot about this until last month. As of now, it is finally an aspect of the game. The student council will now send you to the guidance counselor when they catch you misbehaving, similarly to teachers. However, they will still pepper spray you if they feel that their lives are in danger. Most students only check their locker once at the beginning of the day. This means that if you want a student to find a note in their locker, you have a very small window of time to do it. This prevented the feature from being useful. To solve this problem, it is now possible to tell a student to go check their locker for a note at any time of day. Up until now, Yandere Simulator has not featured a map. This is one of the factors that made it very difficult for newcomers to jump into the game easily. As of now, I have finally added a map to the game. It displays your current location, as well as the location of your senpai and your classroom. Hopefully, this will help newcomers get their bearings much faster. Some characters will use their phones to take an incriminating photo of you if they witness you commit murder. Then they will attempt to send that photo to the police. If you kill them before they send the photo, then you will get away with your crime. But logically, if the police arrive at school for any reason and find corpses, they would check the victims' phones for clues, and would eventually find an incriminating photo of you. This always struck me as a game design oversight. So as of now, if anyone takes an incriminating photo of you, you are required to destroy their phone, to eliminate the possibility that you could be arrested for the evidence on that phone. The ability to hide your identity with a mask was too overpowered, because it would allow you to murder your rival right in front of Senpai with no consequence. To balance this feature, I've decided to give Senpai a unique reaction to witnessing a masked murderer. I've decided that Senpai has a strong sense of justice, and feels disdain for people who commit evil behind a veil of anonymity. The sight of a masked murderer will fill Senpai with disgust, and cause him to disregard his own safety and unmask the murderer at all costs. This means that if Senpai sees you commit murder while wearing a mask, he'll run up to you and rip the mask off your face, which will cause an instant game over. This will prevent the mask feature from being easily exploited. For a long time, I felt that it doesn't really make sense for Yandere-chan to be able to run away from pursuers. It makes sense for games where it's possible to escape the consequences of your actions by fleeing and hiding. But if Yandere-chan has committed a murder in front of a teacher, she can't just run away and return to school the next day like nothing happened. It simply doesn't make sense to give the player the option of running away, since your pursuer isn't going to forget what they saw. So, from now on, if someone begins to chase Yandere-chan, you no longer have the option of running away from them, and you have to confront them immediately. During low school atmosphere, students are paranoid that a serial killer could be lurking around any corner. Logically, they should react differently to your behavior when they are in that kind of state. I've decided that if the player is spotted while covered in blood and wielding a weapon during low school atmosphere, the witness will automatically assume that you are a murderer, without actually seeing a corpse or a murder. Several years ago, I stated that students with the social butterfly persona would react to murder by running to a crowd of students and hiding among them. However, the game never actually functioned that way, until recently. As of now, you will finally see social butterflies behaving as they were always meant to. They will determine which location at school currently contains the most students, and will run to that location for safety. For a long time, losing your sanity in Yandere Simulator only affected the game in a small number of ways. You would look suspicious, and your attack animations would become more brutal, but aside from that, losing your sanity didn't feel like losing your sanity. I decided that I wanted to improve this, so I've updated the sanity feature in a number of ways. When Yandere-chan's sanity drops very low, she will begin to have intrusive thoughts. This means that no matter how hard she tries to concentrate, she will be unable to stop thinking about killing her rival. From the player's perspective, these thoughts will be perceived as ghostly visions of Yandere-chan performing gruesome murder animations on her current rival. She will also lose her self-control and start involuntarily giggling to herself, which will attract the attention of people around her. Additionally, she will lose the ability to distinguish people from one another. Because the only person she cares about is her senpai, everyone else will become a dark blur. And finally, she will become unable to resist her murderous urges, and she will automatically attack anyone who is within range, without any input from the player. Everything I've just described is only a small portion of the many changes that were made to the game in April. I also made numerous other additions to the game, such as putting props inside of Infochan's room to give it the atmosphere that I always imagined for it, and adding a red string of fate that connects Senpai to the current rival. Every month, I look at Yandere Simulator and ask myself, is it ready for the first rival yet? And the answer is always, no. I can't justify putting a rival into the game, while there are still so many broken mechanics, design flaws, and missing features. I started the month of April with a giant list of all the issues that needed to be fixed before I would be willing to implement a rival. But by the end of April, that list had shrunken down to just 2 or 3 remaining issues. This makes me feel like I'm at the stage of development where I'm rolling out the red carpet for the first rival. I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope you can see it too. Thank you for following the development. Recently, I've been making a lot of progress on Osana and Raibaru. In this video, I'm going to show you everything that I've been working on, except the things that are spoilers. Every day, Osana will have several scripted events. These events were created long before Raibaru was implemented, so there wasn't any code telling her what to do during an event. As a result, she just awkwardly stood next to Osana during each of her events. One of the things I've been doing recently is going through all of Osana's events and giving Raibaru an appropriate action to perform. When Osana speaks with Senpai, Raibaru watches from afar. Other times, she functions as a guard, who protects Osana when she is in a vulnerable state. She always has a routine that causes her to take her eyes off of Osana for a short time, which provides the player with an opportunity to perform some type of sabotage. If the player attempts to attack Osana when Raibaru isn't looking, Osana will scream, which will instantly alert Raibaru. While implementing Raibaru, I've also been playtesting each of Osana's events to confirm that they are functioning as intended. During this process, I sometimes discover that changes need to be made to the school environment to facilitate certain options for the player. For example, if you want to obtain Osana's smartphone, you have to steal it when she leaves it in her locker. To force her to travel to the locker room and change her clothes, you have to dump water on her. But if you missed your one opportunity to dump water on Osana, then you would permanently lose your chance to sabotage certain events. This didn't strike me as good game design, so I decided to do something about it. I wanted to make it possible to lure Osana into a bucket trap by attracting her attention with a giggle. But a student will not investigate a giggle if they can clearly see the person who is giggling. And the school plaza is a wide open area with nothing to hide behind. So attempting to lure Osana into a trap was impossible. To make this strategy available to the player, I had to change the design of the plaza. I added more bushes, which provide the player with cover, so that it's possible to lure Osana over to the nearest door with giggles. Now the player has more options, and the plaza looks much better. You might be surprised to see that I've added a large wooden deck to the hill behind the school. Exactly like the bushes, there is a game design justification for this addition. Every week, on Friday, your current rival will put a love letter into Senpai's locker, and then wait for him behind the cherry tree. While waiting for Senpai, the rival is completely vulnerable and defenseless. It's objectively the most convenient time to eliminate your rival. This exploit removes all challenge from the game. To solve this problem, I decided that every Friday, various students will gather behind the cherry tree to perform some sort of activity together. During Osana's week, it's the art club who gather behind the tree to make paintings. This ensures that at least 5 witnesses will be present and looking in the direction of Osana while she is waiting for Senpai. In order for this idea to work, the students needed somewhere to stand, which is why I added the wooden deck. If you're still determined to eliminate Osana when she's behind the cherry tree, it's definitely possible. You could kill the leader of the art club to make them disband before Friday. Or you could befriend all of them in advance and simply ask them to leave the area. Or you could become a delinquent and intimidate them into leaving. Or maybe it will be possible to cancel the activity by simply stealing all of their paint before the activity begins. Because of the sheer number of different features in the game, you have a lot of creative freedom when deciding how to solve a problem. It's very likely that, as I continue to implement Osana, I'll discover various other ways that the school environment needs to be changed to facilitate stealth gameplay or remove exploits. So don't be surprised if you see more additions over the next few weeks. One way to eliminate a rival is to do such a massive favor for her that she will trust you enough to enter your home alone.